Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Veg Networking Canada. We honor, acknowledge, and respect that many of us are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. Veg Networking Canada is a community where vegan, plant-based companies connect and collaborate. We have awesome conversations with awesome entrepreneurs, and today is nothing short of that. Our special guest today is a Toronto-based actress, screenwriter, and producer who has starred in award-winning film and television projects. Outside of her work in film, she is a voice for stopping animal cruelty and making the world a kinder place. Veg Networking Canada is pleased to introduce the host of the Vegan Fashion Show. Welcome, Angie Bell.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. And for all of us who are here with you live and those who are going to be listening, we're excited to hear more about you, what the Vegan Fashion Show is all about. But why don't we start with you, Angie Bell, personally? Tell us more about your own vegan start, your plant-based origin story, if you would.
So like many of us, my vegan story, it wasn't sort of one moment that happened instantaneously. I mean, if I look back, I was raised by a single mom who, from a very early age, raised me primarily on a plant-based diet. So it's not that we didn't have meat in our household, we did, but we didn't eat it very frequently. And so from a very early age, I never really thought it was strange or different to eat plant-based. In fact, I never felt like it was in any way sort of strange. But I would say that the main turning point for me in terms of sort of my vegan journey, I remember I was about 12 years old and my mom sent me, I should say I was on a school trip and I went to a fair, which here in Toronto is very popular. It's called the Royal Winter Fair. It's like a big agricultural celebration of everything big agriculture. And I remember my mom sent me with $40 in my pocket, and I was very excited because I intended on spending that $40 on like souvenirs or whatever kids want to spend 40 bucks on. And I very clearly remember I was a blank slate at that point. I really hadn't been introduced to what veganism was, even what vegetarianism was. We didn't really talk about it in our household. But I remember when I was at this fair, we approached um, the pig section, which I remember as a child seeing that the pig section wasn't called like pigs, it was called pork. And I remember seeing this mother pig in what I now know to be a gestation crate. And they had her on display with her little babies, and she was surrounded by her children, her babies. And I remember watching as a child, watching them kind of scramble to move around her in this really tight crate. And I watched as all these people were just crowding around this crate, and I instinctively knew I could see the fear on this mother's eyes, and you could see the fact that people were pounding on her crate, and it was just in my heart, I knew it was wrong. I knew that the situation was wrong. And so I took the $40 that my mom had given me. And I remember, and I know this sounds very naive now, but I remember I'd actually walked up to this farmer and said to him, look, I have $40. Let me just, like, I don't know how much they cost, but let me just take them out of here. Let me get them out of here. And I remember at the time he laughed at me because that's not something that you can do. But I remember walking away from that experience thinking, it stuck with me for a very long time because I knew two things. I knew that around these pigs, as I had said, like there was all these labels that said pork and all these brochures that talked about how juicy their meat was. And yet when I saw them in the crate, they were no different than I was. They had emotions, they were sentient. Um, So anyway, I walked away from that experience, and I wish I could tell you that in that moment I turned vegan, but I didn't. I walked away and I went back to my household, and again, my mom didn't cook primarily with meat. We still ate it from time to time. Um, but it's funny how somehow in your mind you can push back the things that you don't really want to accept. And so flash forward to I was about 20 years old in my 20s, and I saw a film called Dominion. And Dominion is a movie that talks about the state of big agriculture in Australia, but all of the practices that they show in that film are are practices that are in place around the world. It's not specific to Australia. And we're talking about like gassing, stunning, the horrible, horrible practices that they have in place in big agriculture. And it's an unflinching portrayal. I shouldn't say portrayal, it's an unflinching documentary that shows the practices at place. And that was the moment for me that I actually said, okay, I know this knowledge and I can't forget about it. I can't put it aside. I need to make a difference. I need to change. And I actually felt revolted when I started walking by places that sold meat. I couldn't separate what I had seen from the meat that you'd buy, say, at the grocery store or in a fast food chain store. Um, and so to answer your question, in my 20s, my early 20s, I turned vegetarian. So that was my first sort of transition moment. I cut out meat from my diet, but I was still eating dairy. I was still eating like eggs and cheese. And a really good friend of mine reached out to me who was vegan, and she made the connection to me how, and a lot of people don't know this in the public. They don't know that the dairy industry is very closely intertwined with the meat industry. I mean, they're so closely intertwined. And so if you're helping one, you're essentially aiding a system that it's all the same. And so once she pointed that out to me, that was my moment where that was it. That was it. And since then, I've, I do acting. I'm in film and TV, and I happened to cross paths with Vicky Lanola, who's the executive producer of the Vegan Fashion Show, and we just really bonded over our passion for animals. And that's sort of what one thing led to the other. And I was invited to be the host of the show, and ever since I could possibly do it, I've been using my voice to speak up for. I mean, it's a phrase that's been used many times, but I try to be a voice for the voiceless. I try to speak up for animals because they desperately need us to. So that was a very long answer, but that's my vegan journey.
We love long answers here at Veg Networking Canada. It's so great to hear people's stories in depth and different perspectives. That's why this is intended to be kind of somewhat a long form conversation. So absolutely amazing and really, really interesting how you pointed out for yourself that cognitive dissonance doesn't often shatter just at once, how it starts to crack and crack and crack, and then that cognitive dissonance shatters. So very interesting. Hopefully you said some things that those people are listening are going to kind of look out for on their own to realize what you're saying if they haven't already. And if they, to your point, have heard it already, maybe that's just what they needed to hear. So switching gears from that to the business side, because that's what Veg Network Canada is all about, awesome conversations with awesome entrepreneurs. Our second question for you is, can you tell us more about your entrepreneur spark, your entrepreneur spirit, the origin story, how that started? Because what you're doing with the Vegan Fashion Show now and being an award-winning actress, all of that falls into the bucket of entrepreneurship. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you started in that?
Sure. So my background, I took a Bachelor of Commerce, major in marketing from McGill University in Montreal. And I always loved to act. I always have, as long as I can remember. But as I said, I was raised by a single mom who very early on instilled in me that it's very important to have a backup plan. And it's really important that, especially if you're trying to enter into a career that can be, there's ebbs and flows, it's important to be able to look out for yourself, and be able to provide for yourself. So basically, after graduating from McGill University, I managed to sort of carve out a niche for myself. I had the opportunity to work for a few companies. I worked for Disney. I worked for Sullivan Entertainment, some companies that are specifically in film. But I managed to carve out a niche for myself in that um, I help companies in terms of their content management, in terms of their PR, on that side of things, and oftentimes on sort of on a contract basis, on a part-time basis, while also supporting this other element of what I do, which is film. And so I have been very lucky. I have been very fortunate to book a number of projects. Some are still coming out this year. I'm very excited. Accused on Fox is coming out. I can't wait. I am in that as well. So if any of you are watching Fox or Global, if you see Accused, you might see a familiar face. But what's interesting is that I wouldn't have necessarily have guessed that a huge part of acting, a huge part of film, and I want to say film production, is entrepreneurial. It really is about, forging those connections and not being afraid to reach out to somebody and ask them questions. Like, I love what this group is all about, which is like meeting other people and putting ourselves out there and connecting with people and leveraging our skills to help each other and to help each other grow. I think it's fantastic. And certainly with film, that's a huge component of it. Being able to market yourself, being able to support the social side of things, putting together your personal brand. What do you want your voice to be? I know a huge part with you know I dearly love film, but one of the amazing parts of being an actor um, has been that I've been able to use my voice to help support the causes that I very much care about, like animal activism. I mean, I love that I've been able to reach people that are not necessarily vegan. I mean, many of them are not, and I've been able to actually get them talking. Maybe I haven't been able to change all of their opinions all at once, but I think a large part of it is starting the conversation. Um, so yeah, it's been an unexpected path. I never would have guessed back in my McGill days that I necessarily would have been doing acting or doing film production, but I got to say the writing skills I had from McGill, I've been definitely able to leverage that towards storytelling and doing scripts and script reviewing and working on production teams. So yeah, it's been an unexpected journey, but it's very fulfilling for sure being able to take those skills and put them into something I passionately care about.
Well, we've only really gone through two questions, and there's no doubt that you're a really great storyteller. That's for sure. So,
Sorry.
um, uh, no, sorry, absolutely no sorry needed. In terms of the next question for you, it's centered around like you can look at it as trends, or maybe even beyond that, transformations. So you might answer this question from the lens of the vegan fashion show, what you're doing with corporate PR communications, maybe in film, maybe in animal rights, however you want to answer that. But the question that we always ask is, what are some trends or transformations in your industry?
So since I've joined, one of the amazing things I've seen, there's an amazing organization that is called um, I think it was called the Material Innovation Initiative. They're amazing, and they do studies specifically to do with vegan plant-based trends. They release a trend yearly, and so I actually followed their most recent report. And one trend that is very much trending in this industry right now, and it's all industries, but is sustainability. The push towards sustainability, the push towards innovative materials, the push towards next generation materials. So by next generation materials, what I'm talking about is, especially in the fashion industry, oftentimes we used animal-based products, right? So things that, like, for example, leather, fur. Whereas the vegan fashion industry is rethinking the materials that we're using. So some examples of next generation materials would be there are materials now being made out of plants, mycelium, which is, if you've seen The Last of Us, mycelium is a type of fungi. There's also recycled products. For example, there's a lot of coats right now being made of recycled plastic bottles. And it's resulting in just fascinating products that are coming to the market. And we actually were able to showcase a few of them at our show. So for example, we have bags that are made of teak leaf leather, which is made of teak leaves. There are bags that are made of berry stacks, which is strawberries. And if you actually hold these bags and smell them, they smell like strawberries. It's amazing. It's amazing what we can think up when we put our minds to it and actually put our resources into creating a more sustainable future. So for sure, an amazing trend that I've seen in our particular industry, like the vegan fashion industry, is a push towards innovation, sustainability, materials that have a lower carbon footprint. And I'm so fortunate that we've been able to feature a lot of these materials in our show.
Absolutely. Sounds like with what you just said, lots and lots and lots of R&D, as well as an accompaniment to that sort
All
of a
the time.
trend.
Mhm.
So in terms of the vegan fashion show, it's helpful for our special guests to kind of walk our listeners up to speed on, the past, where we are today. Because the next question is, where is your brand going in the future? Because we think that, is it true that the vegan fashion show right now is only in Toronto, or? for their plans to expand? Like,
It
what's up?
is only in Toronto right now. As to whether there's plans to expand, I can't speak to that yet. I don't know that that's necessarily on the horizon. But just some background on what it is. So basically, it's the brainchild of Vicky Lanola, who's the executive producer of the show. She is a PR mastermind. She is an activist. She's a model. She's an actress as well. But she came together with Laura Warner, who is also an activist and who also has a fashion line. I believe the plan started in about 2019. But fast forward to 2022, we held our first vegan fashion show in Toronto. We sold out, which was amazing. We had 150 plus guests. It was so much fun. I want to say it was a mix of sort of entertainment because we had a catwalk, we had vendors who were selling food and selling products, vegan, of course, everything vegan. But then we also had an educational component too, because we had, like talking about next generation materials, we had a full textile wall showing the different next generation materials that are coming out. And we also showed a trailer for a film called Slay, it's a documentary talking about the cruelty inherent in the vegan fashion industry. So it was a wonderful night. Also, all the funds, we raised funds through that evening. All the funds, which equated to $6,501, all of that went to Animal Justice, which is the organization leading the fight for animal rights here in Canada. So it was a hugely successful night. And right now, I can tell you we are deep in planning for Vegan Fashion Show Round 2. And yes, Slay is a fantastic documentary. I highly recommend it. Highly, highly recommend it. You can watch it on Waterbear, which is a great app. Highly recommend that too. But yeah, year 2, vegan fashion show. So the date will shortly be announced. We'll be doing it on our socials for anyone. You are all very welcome to come. I would love to see all of your faces there. But yeah, we'll be announcing the date very shortly. But I don't want to give away too much. We haven't announced our designer lineup quite yet, but I can tell you it's going to be way bigger and way better than ever. So there you go. That's your summary. Yeah, that's what the vegan show is and where it's going. It's going to be bigger than better than ever. It's going to be great.
That is so great. And you touched on the next question, which is centered around charity and giving back. You mentioned animal justice. So feel free if you want to shine some more light on animal justice, and or if there are any other organizations that you along your path have grown fond for and supported or anything like that.
Sure. Well, for sure. I mean, animal justice, huge. I mean, they are sort of, I want to say they are very similar to our PETA. You know, they're the organization leading the voice for animals in Canada. One of the greatest gifts of doing this fashion show has been working with Camille Levchuk. Actually, I've gotten to meet her several times, and I want to get this right. She's the executive director, I believe, of Animal Justice, but she is just such a light in terms of such an eloquent human being, and the way that she uses her voice to fight and make a difference in our country has been incredible. So yeah, I love working with her. I love any opportunity to help support all the work that they're doing over there. And I love PETA. And I also want to give a shout out to the Save movement as well. So I don't know if anyone here, I know the Save movement, they're across the world. Like literally, it's not Toronto specific. But they do vigils at slaughterhouses all around the world. And so their platform is basically bearing witness to the suffering that's happening, documenting it. And I've had the opportunity to attend a few vigils as well. And then it's always tricky to speak about this because, you know, they've made such a huge impact on me. And I hate the fact that I have to go to them. I hate the fact that we have to see what's happening. But at the same time, at this time, there's not much else that we can do. All we can do is document and fight. And the one thing I've been able to do is by documenting what I've seen, I've been able to actually start some conversations with people. My mother has turned vegan this year, which was really great. And I could talk volumes about that. She has arthritis and she has certain health conditions that have considerably diminished since going vegan. And there's so many health benefits to that side of things as well. But yeah, those are the organizations that I definitely am proud to support I highly recommend people checking them out if they want to learn more.
Yeah, Animal Save, PETA, and Animal Justice, super dedicated, just
Yeah,
day over day, year over year. Absolutely remarkable.
yeah.
All right, Angie, you've already mentioned two resources through probably well, a lot more, but two resources specific to documentaries. You mentioned Dominion, so if anybody's never heard of that, you can go check that out, and Slay. If nobody's heard of that, you can go check that out. But further beyond that, are there any other resources based on uh, entrepreneurship and or animal rights, or any resources that are books, podcasts, maybe mobile apps on your phone, maybe leadership,
Uh,
mental health, who knows? But any resources you
sure.
want to share?
So one thing I would say is that, as I said, my background's business. So I did feel for a short period of time, and I still feel it. I still feel a bit of imposter syndrome when I try to, as I said, I've been vegan for, I've been vegetarian for 7 years, but I've been vegan for two. So it feels sometimes when I try to speak to vegan people, or not even just vegan people, if I try to speak to the issue, sometimes I feel like an imposter because I haven't done this for a very long time. But I'm very passionate about the things that I've seen. So the reason I mention this is because I've done a lot of reading specific to animal rights and specific to trying to understand, trying to wrap my mind around the language of what this topic is, specifically so that we can touch people, so that we can get people to listen and care. And so a book that really made an impact on me, it was called Animal Liberation by Peter Singer. And I think that's kind of like that's the Bible as far as animal rights. I know they sell it on PETA's, like their shop, and it's on Amazon too. But it's a great book that really gives an animal rights activist the tools and um, the tools to articulate a lot of the principles and a lot of the things that we've seen in a way that is powerful. I really think that he's a great writer. There's also a book I read recently that really left an impact on me. It was called Free the Animals. Um, it was called Free the Animals, and it's by Ingrid Newark, the president of PETA. And that's talking about it's sort of the story of the Animal Liberation Front and how it started. And what I loved about that one is that it doesn't read like an academic book. It sort of takes you along on the journey of these liberationists and the animals that they save and the unique stories behind every single one of them. Highly recommend it. I couldn't put it down. And it's just, you cry, you laugh. It's a really, really good book. If you want to sort of hear about how that movement got started, and it's intense, that movement. I mean, we know that it takes a great deal of bravery to go into the places that they go to, but to hear about sort of the first pioneers that began that, um, I highly recommend that for sure. I'm not a huge user of apps, but I do highly recommend also WaterBear. WaterBear is fantastic as far as just seeing content, everything to do with like animal rights to environmental awareness, all that kind of stuff.
So great. And the way that you led into that question, we presume landed with a lot of people, because it's not a matter of judgment or comparison about how long you've been doing the right thing. Like before we started recording, some people have mentioned they've been vegan for a couple of years, some 20 years. It doesn't matter. I think we can all agree that it doesn't matter if it's 2 days. Like if you knew better and then all
It's
of a
the
sudden
click.
started,
It's
yeah,
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 it's the click. It's the click. All
yeah.
right. So next question is centered around inspiration. You can take that as certain organizations or people that actually inspire you. Others have taken it as sort of maybe describing what inspiration actually means to them, if that makes sense. You've mentioned Ingrid from PETA and Camille from Animal Justice. Are there any other sources of inspiration or inspiration as a whole that you want to touch on?
Sure. I mean, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone who's put like the animal justice. Sorry, yes, animal justice. I adore them and I love them. But the vegan fashion show team, the whole, I want to say like the creative team behind it. I can't say enough. Vicky, Laura Warner. Also, there's a singer. She's an award winning. I think she's one of CBC's like top like 10 instrumentalists of her name is Stephanie Braganza, and she's an activist. She's a Toronto-based activist, But what I'm so inspired from with Stephanie is that she's a singer, and what she's done is she's used her talent to fight for the animals. So she's actually created viral videos that have done really, really well on YouTube. They've done fantastic on social media, but she's used her voice and her talent and her gift to essentially change people's minds. I've always been so inspired by that. Her name is Stephanie Berganza. I hugely recommend checking her out. And the other thing, and it hit me when you said it. I think one thing that really lights my fire and keeps me going, because I mean, this can feel like a thankless fight sometimes. It can feel like you're always fighting an uphill battle because the world around us is so entrenched in a system that is built in a very specific way that is cruel, and that they don't, they don't care about the animals, and it can be very frustrating as an activist sometimes that you just want to tell everybody, you want to tell your friends, you want to tell the people you work with, and no one wants to hear you. I think what really lights my fire is those moments, those breakthrough moments where you touch a person that didn't expect to be touched. um, I know on a few podcasts that I've done, I've had people that have actually reached out to me personally and said, "Hey, can you? I didn't know, like I didn't know that it was that way. Can you just tell me a bit more? I'm just curious to know a bit more." And it's those moments that give me hope that the future will be brighter, and that we are that the future that we're fighting for is achievable, even if it isn't, tomorrow or the next day. Um, yeah.
Very, very, very powerful. You mentioned Stephanie Berganza and what she does as a singer with her voice as an activist. It a little bit adjacent to that, but also Julie Black changing the Canadian national anthem to "Our Home on Native Land," I think is another
Mhm.
form of what you're talking about, right? Incredible.
Absolutely.
Lots of positive change happening for animals, human animals, non-human animals, the environment, all of it. It's amazing. So, last question for you, Angie, is around lessons, wisdom. If you'd like to frame it as giving advice or not, we're surely asking. That's the whole point of this question, is kind of extract some wisdom and golden nuggets from you. You had already mentioned through the conversation at the very beginning, sort of some advice, I think, is put yourself out there regardless of what other people think. And you had just mentioned too, why is because you never know when it's going to land for somebody. So, with all that said, please let us know if there's any lessons, wisdom, advice that you'd like to share with those listening, whether it's, again, on the business front and or animal rights front.
I think one of the things that I've learned over the past few years being in this space is that sort of two things. The first thing is that, as I said, have confidence in yourself. Believe that your voice, even if, as I said, like even if it's been for me only 2 years, have confidence that your perspective is valid and that your unique experience will resonate with somebody out there. And to use, I mean, one thing that it's given me a great deal of solace and peace in my own personal life is, I think it's very human to kind of wonder, like, what's my purpose and what's my goal in life, and like, what does it all mean? And I would have thought that film might have satisfied that, and certainly, working in business, there's been moments where it's been satisfying, but it didn't satisfy that. Um, Whereas I will say that having leveraged the variety of weird talents that I've been gifted, and just throwing them full heartedly into this cause that is so desperately dear to my heart, has given me that solace and given me that purpose and connected me with a community of extraordinary people that I am just so grateful to be involved with. And I mean, this is a great example. Like, you are also gifted and also talented. And I would not be in this room, I would not be in this space had I not made that leap and decided to be different. And I guess at the core of being vegan is to be different, is to think differently, and to not be afraid, even if the world doesn't want to hear you, to speak up if you see that something's wrong. So those are things that have given me some peace. And so I don't know if they're sort of lessons or pearls or whatever, but you know, if that learning has helped me, maybe it'll help someone else.
Absolutely. And everybody listening can agree that more solace and more peace in their life is definitely a welcome gift. So that's a great frame to look at that through. Well, Angie, before we let people know the Vegan Fashion Show, where they can find out more online and on Instagram and give you your outro, is there anything that came up in this conversation or anything maybe that we missed in terms of announcements or anything else? Just want to kind of leave the open floor for you here at the end.
Nothing that we missed. I guess I want to finish it off by saying that, you know, I would, everyone here is welcome at the show. I would love to see everyone. You know, it's going to be an amazing night. There's so many reasons why it will be an amazing night. But everyone is welcome. And if you're interested, just go to theveganfashionshow.com. It's all the information is going to be posted there. It'll be on our socials as well. We have a Facebook. I know we have a Facebook and an Instagram. I'm not sure if we have a Twitter, but we definitely are on Facebook and an Instagram. But everyone here is welcome. You guys, I would love to see all your faces in person. And just thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for having me here. It's been a delight.
Thank you so much. And that is going to everybody listening. You are welcome to be at the Vegan Fashion Show this year. And people innately love looking forward to something, and a little bit of mystery and excitement is great. So it's probably a good thing that you didn't give away too much. That's so great. So you can find out more, like Angie said, online, www.thefashionshow.org. And easy to remember, same on Instagram at the Vegan Fashion Show. So this has been another great conversation with the host of the Vegan Fashion Show, Angie Bell. Everybody listening, we look forward to catching you and seeing you soon on another episode of Veg Networking Canada. But for now, bye and take care.
Thank you.